Hey guys, it's Pineapple and it's Sunday, so we're going to read this week's chapter of My Hero Academia. Usually I do like a review after the fact and everything. I really shouldn't say usually because I'm not really consistent with my uploads. Even though I'm trying to be, you see me working this month and grinding. I think we're going to switch it up this week actually. I think we're going to do just a live chapter read. I'm going to read the chapter. I'm not going to show it on screen obviously, but you can read along with me. I wonder if I read faster or slower than you. I didn't really think that through. But we're going to read the chapter obviously together. So if you want to just, talk in chat, I'm going to be in chat. I should premiere this video probably, and I'll be replying to you in chat as soon as it's up. So let's read the chapter right now. It's chapter 350 of My Hero Academia. Of course, you can read the chapter on viz.com for free right now. The 3 most recent chapters are available, so you can read the official translation. You don't have to worry about like fan scans or anything. I know some people are really, they have a whole thing about that. So you can read the official version. Let's do that right now. I'm going to react to my live read of the chapter. So starting off, My Hero Academia chapter 350 starts with a black panel. I suppose the big day has begun then. Chapter 350, Bound to a Fiery Fate by Kohei Horikoshi. So we're in the police station. There's like a monkey man. He's walking towards like a corridor. He says, "Be quiet." He looks at a door down the hallway, and from the door comes a voice that says, "You're light on guards today, so it's pretty obvious. All to prepare for today. That's why we sought out twisted raw material born into this world." So we have some exposition going on with the Doctor, obviously. We know that at the end of the last arc, the Doctor was put away in prison, right? So that's why they're not able to make any new Nomu or really do a lot of the complicated quirk surgery stuff that the Doctor was capable of doing. So I'm wondering, like, what All For One did to beef himself up for this final battle, right? Like, we know that he has this hard helmet. Maybe that was made by the Doctor already, or he made it with some sort of, like, I mean, All For One does act like he has the quirks to make anything, like any alloy or water or any resource. So maybe he just crafted himself a cool helmet, right? That would be fun to see, Hori. I want to see All For One just this helmet's going to be cool. I feel like that would have been really awesome. But, of course, since we're rushing through everything, we don't have time for that. So we see Dr. Garaki sitting in a cell. He's talking about how they have taken these warp seeds that could serve as his vessel from all over the world, twisted seeds that grew into various villains that we know in the series. And we go to the next page and we see Dabi really awesomely kind of like floating above the All Might statue in the middle of Camino Square, right? And usually the way that we see characters with fire powers flying, it's like there's a little jet kind of bit of flame coming from their feet, but this literally looks like Dabi is kind of mimicking the Nejire fairy dance, right, where she kind of just floated upwards on her spirals. There's just this big spiraling billow of flame, and Dabi is on top of it with his coat and everything just kind of running ragged everywhere, and I think that's really cool. And we get a redraw of the final panel last week. I know some people were wondering whether or not Hori was like okay, because the final panel last week was like of Dabi with his face falling off, but it looked a little rough compared to Horikoshi's usual art, right? It looked a little rough. So I think maybe this is confirmation that that last panel was a little rushed, just because we're seeing pretty much the exact same panel this chapter, just drawn with way more detail. And I think if it was going to be like, a big final page like it was last week, it would be drawn with a lot of detail, especially when compared to like a smaller panel like this. So that's just a little thing to note. Hope Horikoshi is enjoying the break that he's going to get over this next week. He really deserves it. And yeah, hopefully he comes back rested and feeling like he wants to continue the manga for another 400 chapters. Not gonna happen. So from this page of Shoto looking at Dabi as Dabi's face is crumbling away and everything, and Shoto's like, we have the next page covering a flashback where we go back to Sekoto Peak 11 years earlier, and we catch right back up to that moment where we left Dabi before it cut to like Endeavor getting to Sekoto Peak and finding whatever he found, or like pretty much seeing like, oh, my son is gone. We cut back to that moment where we saw Dabi, or I guess I should really have to stop calling him Dabi when we do these flashbacks. He's Touya. He's like, holding himself and he's on fire and whatnot. We saw that in the original flashback, but now we're seeing him run through the forest. And as he's running through the forest, thinking about how hot this fire on his body is, he reaches for a small little, like, it looks like a river or a stream or something, right? Like, obviously the smart play is to go into water. But what Dabi's last thoughts are before blacking out completely are, I still haven't shown him anything, right? Like, he's still very fixated on showing Endeavor what he's capable of, and this really big sad mistake, this one bad day as you would call it in My Hero Academia terms, is really unfortunate for Dabi, right? Because this is going to make it so he really can't go back, and we're going to get into that as the chapter goes on. It's really sad and tragic how all the backstories of My Hero Academia tend to like give you that, they give you that sad quality, that sad tragic, this didn't have to happen quality, and I love it. So on the next page, we have the ape cop looking at the door that Garaki is still sitting behind talking, as Garaki continues talking and saying, that one too was born with some cracks in him. No, maybe from the very start it wasn't just cracks. Maybe that boy was born with everything. Now here, it's easy for me to think that he's talking about Dabi here, or talking about Touya, because obviously Toya's a little messed up, but I like how as All For One walks into the panel, because we get this really, really cool page of All For One just walking through the burning forest like it's nothing, by the way. His clothes aren't affected or anything. Walking through the burning forest and seeing Touya completely charred and burned. Like, everything is charred and burned. He looks like almost a corpse, barely wheezing and clinging to life, right? Laying in this pond, which does not go very deep. Like, he's laying in it. It's less water than you would find in a bathtub, it seems like, in the stream, like, as far as depth. And All For One walks up on him, and this text I feel like is really interesting because it could apply, yeah, All For One was definitely born with some cracks, but maybe instead he was born with everything, like whatever that means, right? I feel like that could definitely apply to both of them, because again, but then again, All For One's the man who wants everything, so I feel like if he was born with everything, you know, there'd be nothing for him to want. So maybe it is Touya, right? Maybe this is just talking about how Touya, he really was born with everything he needed, but the one thing he needed, which was approval, right? Endeavor's approval. So from there, we cut over to the next page where we see Touya waking up. His hair is regrown, but he looks way, way, way more familiar to what we know as Dabi, right? Like, he has the mouth separation here. This is going on, right? Like, all the Dabi-isms, except for the fact that he has white hair, which we're only now recently getting used to. So, Touya wakes up in this bed. It's like a really cute cat paw bed. There's like little flowers and origami on the side of the wall, and a get better soon sleepyhead note. So I guess in the little time that he's been here, he's already gained some fans. Look at those Todoroki jeans working. But Touya looks around and he doesn't really recognize where he is, right? It looks like he's in some sort of daycare or pre-K kind of, you know, school or something. And as he's probably thinking that, two girls go, oh, he's awake. Sleepyhead is awake. And they run out to the side of the hallway, obviously, to go get the doctor and notify him. And on the next page, we see Touya saying, where are we? But obviously he doesn't recognize his voice because it's been 3 years, dude. You've aged. Yeah, like, even if your throat wasn't completely burned up or changed or whatever the hell is going on, maybe they replace his throat with another person's throat or voice box or whatever it is, or however that works. But like, yeah, if not that, it's probably just puberty. You know, his voice is probably way deeper than he remembers it. He probably sounded like a little brat before, and now he sounds like a big brat. So on this page, we see Touya looking at a group of fellow test subjects, I guess is what they really are, and they're saying, it's been 3 years, Sleepyhead. You were asleep for 3 whole years. At least that's what the doctor told me, since I haven't been here all that long. Touya thinks to himself, 3 years? How? What happened? What's going on? I was on Sekoto Peak, and then I burned up, and I have to get home. And as he says that, a weird kind of like, at first it looks like a really happy kind of sunflower guy, right? And then you see his body and it's this giant muscular dude, right? Who's probably actually the cook for this area because he's wearing an apron, it seems like, from the back. So there's just this big muscular, hi, happy sunflower face guy. But he's also big and like imposing, obviously, and definitely meant to keep all these children in line. So he on the next page says, from now on, you'll live here with everyone, your very own place under the sun. They're your new family. You'll come to love it as sure as the sun does rise, which obviously is kind of funny because it's a big sunflower, or maybe just a sun, right? Maybe it's not a sunflower. It's just meant to be like a sun with like a little, like a kind of a childishly drawn sun. That's a horrible quirk. I would never want to have that quirk, or whatever that is. I'm good. So on this page, things get sad. It seems like Touya is saying, you know, that can't be. I got to get home. I bet that dad was just too busy with work to come and see me, right? Like, yeah, he must be really worried. Those are some awful things I did and said. I should apologize to mom and everyone, and dad still needs to see what I can do. And the face that he's making where like he still has some hope that everything can go back to normal is just pain, emotional damage. I'm taking emotional damage. It hurts. And then, sadly, on a screen, we see someone say, sadly, your hope is in vain. And we instantly know who that is, right? Talking from a screen. I wonder if, since All For One is talking from a screen, in the years since Dabi has been asleep, if that, like, the All For One and All Might fight took place during that time, right? The initial one that really injured All For One. Because when we saw him pick up Touya, he was still normal, right? So I wonder at what point during the timeline does the All For One and All Might fight happen and brutally maim All For One. Maybe that's not the case, but it seems like that maybe is the case, just because All For One is talking through a TV screen. That's what he does, you know, in the future when his face is all damaged. But maybe he just does that all the time, right? He just talks through computers and stuff like that. Like, that's just his vibe. All For One continues to say, restoring your burnt and broken body was a monumental task. Your missing pieces had to be replaced via regenerative tissue. You're a changed man with that burnt rictus look on your face, and yet you survived. Touya says, I'm changed? I don't get what you're saying. All For One says, you'll never exhibit the power you once did. Every organ was damaged. Your senses, your ability to feel pain, all dulled. Your body is debilitated, and you'll never be the same again. And to that, Touya makes a like he can't believe what he's hearing face, and All For One continues even more to say, but alas, despite our best efforts, we wanted to welcome you in at your full strength. You must be suffering, you poor thing. But I might just be able to restore your flames to their full glory. Well, what do you say? Will you join our family and allow me to raise you? All For One is giving the heavy creeps right now, man. The creepy jeebies. And here's what All For One didn't see coming, right? Touya responds, shut up. No way am I getting trained by anyone else. And I love that All For One thought this was just going to go his way, right? Like he did with Tenko, right? Where he's like, hey, yeah, you don't have your family anymore. They threw you away, blah, blah, blah. But you can come and be part of my family. Join our family and allow me to raise you, and you can be my son. And it's like, is that what you just do? You just go around and like waiting for the perfect situation for someone to abandon their child, and you're like, hey, come be my son, let's go do evil. He really is the worst villain in the series, right? Like, oh. On the next page, Garaki says that he'd already been too molded by his upbringing for us to lead him astray. He was already festering away inside. Even the man who had known absolute control, far and wide, couldn't exploit the boy's obsession with his father. Those kids were our spares, in case anything happened to Tamura Shigaraki. A seedbed of ferocity and hatred, one full of vessels for the Demon King. Dabi, as one of those spares, was a failed experiment. And we see Dabi running away from the facility as he burns it down. And we don't know how many of those other kind of like All For One or Shigaraki backups survived, but we know probably some of them did end up being turned into high-end Nomus or Nomus, right? But I think it'd be interesting to see if like there's any characteristics you could pick out from the different ones and like tie them to a specific Nomu or stuff like that. What I expected to see in this chapter, and I guess I lost my bet, was the Doctor's grandson, who we know became a Nomu in the Stain arc, and we didn't end up actually seeing that, but maybe he was in a different one, you know, maybe there's a different area like that, or a different institution where they do the same thing, and that's where he was held. But I just thought that would have been a really cool tie-in, since we know that that is a link to those two, I guess, that same character. Ape Cop says, how despicable. No, never mind. What are you even trying to say? More crap about how All For One had planned everything out from the start? Garaki says, I'm saying they'd better watch out, because that one boy never did buy what we were selling. Nah, we gave up on Dabi and let him run loose, cause after his body came back to life and he was up and about, he wasn't supposed to be alive for more than a month. Now, that's a very, very interesting phrasing that he uses there, right? Like he says, after his body came back to life. Now, that feels like it's a little teasing, it's a little poking at some theories that we have on Dabi being a phoenix and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the Doctor is extremely confused at how Dabi survived anywhere near as long as he did, considering he wasn't supposed to survive. And after Dabi left the Doctor's care and All For One's care, he would have had no resources at that point, right? Like he would have had no way to actually take care of himself. But we know that he did, evidently, right? Like, that's probably why Dabi looks so pieced together when we see him later on in the series, right? We see the eye, like, you know, the face is starting to, like, this is burning, this is burning, this is burning. All this stuff that isn't scarred currently, it's just, you know, obviously pieced together on him, is all burned now. And he has little, like, piercings holding it together, which I'm sure he might have done himself, honestly, just to make sure that since he's growing and his face is getting bigger and his head is getting bigger, obviously these body pieces that aren't going to grow with him, probably due to being burned, they need to be held together pretty much. And it's really, really metal that he did that. And again, like I was saying before, Dabi's a really metal character, and I love that about him. On this page, we flash back to around the time of the Villain Academia arc, right? The My Villain Academia arc, where we see Dabi had met with the Doctor privately, right? And that makes sense because we know that the Doctor gave the high-end Nomu to Dabi to let him use on Endeavor or whoever he was going to use it on. as part of the operation to pretty much work with Hawks, like Dabi was working with Hawks. During that time, we didn't see that there was a conversation at the time, but the doctor was very, very confused on why Dabi came back and how Dabi was still alive. And Dabi himself realizes that the doctor is the one who kept him alive all this time. The doctor replies to Dabi, "Why, I'm tickled pink that you realize. Now tell me, what's been keeping you kicking?" Pretty much trying to ascertain, like, how are you alive, man? Like, elephant in the room, how are you alive? And Dabi's response is, "Seeing this walking corpse here gives me a decent idea of what you people were planning to do with me. And I'm back now because this seemed like the perfect place for my funeral." And at that moment, Dr. Garaki has like a massive shiver run down his back as Dabi turns and looks at him, and he makes this very, very like resolute face, you know what I mean? Like, and you see just like this gruesomeness on Dabi and his face hanging off and all that kind of stuff. And the doctor says he'd kept his dying body tethered to this world through a pure, blazing grudge. And that is ultimately the doctor's theory of how Touya remained alive, right? And I know some people think that Shigaraki also kind of pulled one of those moves by keeping himself alive via just hatred. Some people say that, I don't remember where they get this from. Maybe it was in like a volume extra, but some people say that the electricity that woke Shigaraki up during the war arc actually shouldn't have been enough to bring his body back, but the hatred that he felt towards society is what brought his body back actually in that moment. And I think that's also really metal, but I don't know if that's true. So as we near the end of the chapter, we see Dabi, we cut back to the current time obviously, we see Dabi saying to Shoto, "Shoto, I did come home actually, even though I was weaker than ever and there was no way that what I was hoping for was there, but I was sure something must have changed. It's all I wanted to see. I still wanted to be seen. But then, instead, I was shown just once more the reason I was born. The fact is, as a failed creation, my life had been pointless. This family had left me behind in their past." And from here, we see that Touya actually did go home, and he saw himself in the shrine that Endeavor has up in his house that we saw him praying to in the Endeavor training arc. But worse, sadly, like the saddest thing, is he saw Endeavor training Shoto, right? Training the hell out of Shoto. And it reminded him that Shoto is obviously the perfect child, right? And like, instead of learning from everything that happened with Shoto, instead of like maybe going in a better direction, Endeavor was just repeating his same mistakes again with another child. And Dabi realized, no, dude, if I go back here, this is actual hell. You know what I mean? Like, this is actual hell. So I'm not going to go back here. Dabi continues to say that when you surpass your limits, it's like everything you built up is flipped upside down. I focused on honing my flames, so I wouldn't be so weak when next we met. This body of mine kept peeling away and falling to pieces, but I never felt a thing. You want battle moves? I've seen them all over and over. And one of Endeavor's allies goes, "Shoto, listen, I think..." And then Shoto replies, "Yeah, he's been prepared to die from the start." As we get back to Dabi's dialogue, he says, "Every time that thing saved the city, every time that thing got a boost in popularity, my heart kept pounding away. Ever since the day that Touya died and Dabi was born." And we see Dabi praying at his memorial in his house, pretty much saying goodbye to the old life that he had and awakening into his new life as Dabi. From there, we see the doctor claiming that heat is energy born of living things as they move and thrive. All for one who seeks to live forever had no use for that mad heat rushing headlong toward death. So pretty much continuing to say that another reason they let Dabi go or Touya go back when he ran away was All for One realized, oh no, yeah, I have no use for that quirk. Like, sure, I could destroy everything and burn everything, but like, nah, maybe that quirk is driving that guy a little crazy. And All for One probably to a certain extent does have to worry about like the fact that a quirk changes your personality to a certain extent, right? So like, I wonder if he was just like, nope, I'd rather not be that crazy, I'm good. On the last 2 pages, we see Dabi completely burned up. He has his hand just like, his hand is on fire actually. Like, it is literally like little flame. It looks like a glove of flames is around Dabi's hands. And his jacket is blazing everywhere. It's the giant fires behind him. His face is all melted here. You just see like this much skin is left on him, right, with his hair sticking out, and he looks like he is pretty much burnt down to nearly muscle. Like, he has a little bit of skin here on his chest. It's nuts. It's pretty nuts. And he's standing on top of the All Might statue. I guess he landed on top of the All Might statue, and burned right through the giant arm part of the All Might statue. And I believe he's even melting the back of All Might's head, right? And it says that the Demon Lord himself had to abandon that frenzied flame of death. Once I've burned away all that thing holds near and dear, that'll be the mark I've left on this world, says Dabi. And in response, Shoto on the last page, last panel, says, like I said, big brother, not on my watch. And as the chapter ends, we see that Dabi is doing his flash fire fist. His hand is literally on fire. It looks really cool. And at the same time, Shoto is not doing flash fire fist. It doesn't seem like he's fighting fire with fire here. We're gonna, I think, next week, or not next week, in 2 weeks, see what Shoto's secret technique is. Because you remember, Shoto's been doing training where he does this, right? He kind of combines both sides and overlaps them in some way, but we don't know entirely like what this was for. My theory was that like he's trying to confuse his body to a certain extent, right? Like we know that fire comes from one side and ice comes from the other side, but by doing this, you can kind of make it so that like, you know, this is your right hand, or I guess to you guys it looks like left, but this is my right hand, but it's on my left side. This is my left hand, and it's on my right side. So if I do this and activate my powers evenly, what would happen? You know what I mean? Could Shoto pretty much find an exploit in his quirk, much like Mirio did, right? Like, could Shoto pretty much find an exploit in his quirk to awaken it even further and come up with some sort of new ability? Like, I don't know, but I think that's what we're going to end up seeing next chapter. We have to wait 2 weeks, 14 days for it, but that has been my reaction, or my read-through of this chapter of My Hero Academia, which is chapter 350. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to see me do actual proper read-throughs like this, every Sunday, let me know in the comment section below. Let me know by getting 500 likes in the video. And yeah, let me know what else you guys want to see this week. Tomorrow is Momoto Monday. We're going to be talking about some Zatch Bell characters. I think we're going to start off with just Zatch, but I am probably going to have a video about Toga, I believe, the end of Toga's story in My Hero Academia. And at some point soon, I'm doing a video about everything you should know about Chainsaw Man before the anime comes out. So, trying to keep with the daily uploads, guys. I'm really trying really hard. Let me know if you appreciate it. Let me know if you want to see more. It's Pineapple. I'll see you guys later. Peace.